What's going on, everybody? Welcome in. We're talking episode 3 of the Car Biz Chronicles. I have promised you guys the best and the brightest, and I deliver and above that with today's show. Josh Letsis is someone I've been following for a long time. As a matter of fact, I followed him originally when he was at Elway. Then he left Elway, did his own gig, if I have the timeline correct, Josh. And then we went from our own gig, helping the world be better at car sales, to now being back running a specific group. Josh, how are you today, man?
I'm incredible. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for asking. So, Josh, do I have the timeline somewhat correct there on sort of the last couple of years of history for you?
Yeah. I was a partner in Elway Chevrolet store for about 6 years, and then did some consulting and training for 2, and then back on the retail side for about a year and a half now.
Year and a half, and I'm sure what a wild ride it has been for you, at least from a distance, watching it.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt. I mean, not only obviously re-entry, but COVID, and you think the world's coming back to normal, and then microchips and supply chains. And it's just, everybody's living it right now. And not even just automotive, right? No matter what, you could be in the restaurant business, or it doesn't matter. It's been an interesting couple years for sure.
Yeah, I'm number 17 of 17 waiting for a sunroof to be put on the back of my house that I paid for my birthday in June. So, I wait patiently. I hope for it to be the next guy in line. But yeah, it is killing everybody right now. You seem to be doing the best you can, like many. Josh, this year on the Chronicles, we're talking about culture, which, again, watching you from afar, I know it's important to you. I know it's something you speak a lot about. So we start off every episode the same way. We'll do it here. Josh, what does culture mean to you?
Yeah. So, one of my guiding philosophies throughout my entire career really has been, I want to treat every single one of my guests like my mom, my dad, my brother, and my sister. And this actually works not only for our customers, but it works equally as well for my employees. And then what I'll tell my team is, do I get along with my brother all the time? No. Do I want to punch him in the nose sometimes? Yes. But but at the end of the day, if we're sitting down at Thanksgiving dinner and he's got a problem, even if I'm mad at him right then and there, I'm going to do everything I can to try and help him solve that problem of his. And that's the philosophy that we use with our customers and we use with our employees. And the way I look at it is, if we treat everybody like that, 97% of them are going to be happy. You're going to have that 3% that no matter what you do, they're not going to be happy. But that's kind of what we use as our guiding barometer for the culture in our store. And, if I have a salesperson or a manager come up to me and go, hey, what would you do in this situation? I'll ask them, what would you do if that was your brother? What would you do if that was your sister? What would you do if that was your mom? And generally speaking, they're going to come up with the right answer or an acceptable answer. I don't know if there's right or wrong in every situation, but they're going to come up with an acceptable answer almost every single time. And so that's how I want them to think when it's talking to an employee, when it's, maybe you've got a difficult situation, whether it's, again, employee or a customer. And I think if they use that as their barometer every time, they're going to come up with the right solution almost every time.
Josh, I love it. I love it because it simplifies, right? It gets rid of gray area. Yeah. It's this idea of treat customers like you want to be treated. I don't know if you want to do that, because I like different things. So I don't know that I would keep my standard to everybody, but if you simplify it, if you say to them, family, I think humanity could learn a lesson from that. If we'd all just sort of look around at people in general, if they were your family, how would you treat them and how would you want their outcome to look? Josh, when did you really start to develop that? You said you've been using it a long time. So when did that really hit home for you as being a part of this business?
Probably 2003 to 2005-ish. I was a sales manager at a monster Dodge store in Arizona. And it's about where my career started to shift as well. And part of it is me personally, is I went from being money motivated, kind of chasing money and that sort of thing, to being people motivated. And the interesting thing was I realized that I got more satisfaction personally from helping a salesperson hit a bonus level he never thought he could, or helping promote a salesperson, getting him, becoming a sales manager, or putting somebody in finance. I grew up in a single wide trailer, grew up dirt poor. So being able to show somebody that they could do what I did with, little to no education, little to no help, just with some hard work and maybe somebody that believed in them. And that's when I realized, wow, this is where I get my satisfaction. And the interesting thing was when I stopped worrying about money, and I started worrying more about the people, all of a sudden I started making more money, and all of a sudden I started getting promoted quicker, faster, better. So that was the really intriguing thing. And, I had a friend who I was sitting out to dinner with him and his wife, and probably the best car guy I've ever worked with, hands down, best closer I've ever worked with. The guy could make a deal where there was no deal. The guy was amazing. And I was telling his wife this while we were at dinner. I'm like, man, this guy, I'm going to leave him nameless right now, but this guy is amazing. He's the best car guy I've ever worked with. And meanwhile, him and I were sales managers together for a while. And at this point, I'm a GSM and getting ready to get my own store. And he goes up to the bathroom and she goes, can I ask you a question? If he's as good as you say he is, why is he still a sales manager and you're getting ready to get your own store? And I said, well, let me be honest with you, is he was that prototypical sales manager that was constantly getting the better pay plan from the next store. Like he was always getting recruited, and he would always, pit one manager against the other manager until he got the best pay plan. And then he'd go, and in the short term, he made more money than I did. There's no question. For about 2 or 3 years there, he was definitely outperforming me when we compared W-2s. But in the long term, and I'll tell you, 15 years later, he's still a sales manager. He's got an incredible pay plan, I'm sure of that. But he never laid down his roots. He never, really sat down and said, I'm going to help this store out. I'm going to help this group of salespeople out, and never really got a real strong following from management above him and, salespeople below him. He's still an incredible car guy, not taking anything away from him. But that was one thing that really catapulted my career, was I took that philosophy of treating everybody like family, and then I transitioned that from customers to also salespeople, and really decided I want to make it my goal to try and promote everybody that not only wants to, because all of them will raise their hand and say they want to, but also that are willing to put in the work to get there. And once I did that, that's when my career really started to take off. But I'd have to say that's single-handedly probably one of the biggest things that changed the trajectory of not only my career and my life, but also the people that I was surrounding myself with, whether it was more managers around me or whether it was salespeople around me as well. But that's probably one of the things that I hang my hat on the most, is how many people's lives can I change?
And I got to tell you, it's a story we hear a lot, right? Car guys have been doing this a long time, myself included. I had a guy on the show a while back named Trey Hudson. Trey's got a similar story to yours. And it's just this idea that we do what we do because we love it. I had no education. I didn't have many advantages growing up, if any at all. And this business really, it spoke to me. It gave me the opportunity to be myself. And when you talk about the sales manager cycle, I think that's an important part of the culture discussion. If you have people on your staff that are just looking for the next pay plan or looking for the next deal, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But that may not fit who you are as a business. That might be a star sales manager sitting in front of you from the numbers perspective, but if they've got 7 jobs in 15 months, that might be a pause to you. That might be something you stop and say to yourself, that doesn't fit my culture. Josh, when it comes to hiring, how important is the history to fitting and looking at what fits your culture today of people applying for jobs?
So it's super important, but I like to get more to the story, right? The first thing is, if they come to you for money, they will also leave you for money, right? So if you get a guy, gal, whoever, is coming because they want to make more money, I want to get a few more details there, right? Are they, maybe their pay plan's bad, maybe they're at a bad store, maybe there's more to the story there and they want a bigger opportunity. Great, let's talk to them. But if they're at a good store, they're performing well, and they're like, hey, I want this percentage and this and that. Well, guess what? As soon as they're there, 6, 8, 12 months later, they're going to be talking to somebody else to try and get a bigger percentage again. So, if they come to money, they'll leave you for money. So that's one thing that, that I look at. And I always try and find somebody when we're talking about management level positions that maybe that's got a little chip on the shoulder. Maybe they have got something to prove. Maybe they grew up like me, maybe they didn't, but one of those things is that constant desire to prove people wrong. I found that really works well for me, and I'm not afraid to hire somebody who's young. I'm not afraid to hire somebody who's inexperienced, because I can I can give them that experience. I can teach them things, so, I really look for that, that thing that you can't quite quantify, that's deep down in their belly. That's like, hey, I just want to prove the world wrong and show that I can do this job. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I look for.
I think a chip on the shoulder can be a huge asset to people, as long as it doesn't become your guiding force, right? I think when it guides you, I think it can guide you in a negative way. In the same way, I think chasing money. I mean, that's how I did my whole life. People would ask me, Sean, you sell cars, how do you sleep at night? I used to reply, on a big pile of money, mind your own business. And it was the response of the attitude. I was 19 years old. You're making six figures. You're driving a free $50,000 truck. At that time, I lived in my parents' basement. Who could possibly tell me what to look out for? Yeah. And now that I don't chase money, like you, man, my life, it's not just my business trajectory. My life's trajectory has changed. I don't know that I would be in the healthy relationship that I am or who I am if I didn't give up the money chase. I really don't. So, Josh, now when you look at people, right, obviously as a manager, we used to always talk, right? You love a guy who's got hunger, and that meant debt, that meant kids, that meant cars, that meant rent, right? Yeah. That's how it was. That's how we were raised. What is Josh's spin on that today as an executive leader that you are? How do you work with your people to sort of motivate them in ways that aren't like you and I were told to be motivated, which is you got bills to pay, so go pay them? Yeah. How do you deal with it?
Yeah. I mean, that's right. That was the thing, your manager was always trying to get you to buy a bigger house, a bigger car, get married, do all these things that would motivate you out of like fear almost, right? Like if I don't pay my bills, I'm going to go bankrupt,
I thought he cared about my life, Josh. I thought he wanted me to have a better life. I realized that was not what was going on here.
Not at all. No, not at all. Not at all. So, I mean, what I like to talk to my team about more now is making sure that their life is taken care of, right? We'll talk about books to read. We'll talk about exercising, eating good, not going out drinking all night. We'll talk about, things like that, investments that they can make. Because I want them to be comfortable, and I want them to look at me as somebody who helped them get to that level of comfort. I remember as a salesperson, even as a young manager, I mean, you're always looking over your shoulder, number one, thinking somebody's going to, I'm going to get fired. Number two, I got to pay these bills. Otherwise I'm going to go bankrupt. I mean, it's like, you're always looking over your shoulder for something, because there was always that fear that was getting planted in me by a bunch of, managers above me. And I don't want my team to think like that. And I truly believe that if I treat them good and I can coach and counsel them for every aspect of life. And, we talk about things all the time that relate to business, but also relate to your marriage and relate to your personal life and that sort of thing. Because I want them to be happy at home. If they're not happy at home, they're not going to perform well at work. I think, previously guys liked other guys that weren't happy at home because they'd work a bunch and, that sort of thing. And, that's not what I want. I want them happy at home. I want them, happy with their kids and the relationship with their kids. And obviously I personally believe that if they have all of those things and, maybe we're reading a good book together, or, we're listening to a podcast together or something like that, that they will perform better and they'll be a better leader for the salespeople. And if I can get them doing that and coaching and counseling the salespeople, it's just a better ecosystem. I truly believe it's a much better ecosystem for us to live in and for us to grow other, potential managers out of.
It's certainly better than the one we grew up in as far as the ecosystem goes. And because, there's nothing wrong with it. We learned a lot. I think what's valuable to us, Josh, is that we had been there. So we know what those feelings are like. When someone's sitting in front of you and they're tapped. You know what that looks like, and you're not here to continue to tap them. You're here to try and recharge them. When I remember walking in an office being tapped and someone going, yeah, better go outside, have a cigarette, get yourself ready to go because we got Saturday morning company. You're just like, dude, I don't have it, And so I really appreciate that. And you simplify it again. Treat them like family. Ask the questions. I've heard you say it now multiple times on the counseling and being there with them as human beings. Josh, how much of that do you believe is your responsibility from culture as a DP executive manager that you are? How much responsibility of culture change, if you want to say that, or culture being what you expect it to be? How much of that starts with you?
All of it. Every bit of it, every bit of it. The store, when we bought the store, the gentleman running the store clearly was successful. I mean, he had a bunch of stores and made a bunch of money, but he was a little bit of an old school guy.
A little bit different. I used to work out in Colorado, Josh. I remember the name. I've heard the horror stories of
Yeah.
All of what people may believe they think they know, but still a car guy in the time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, kind of, stuck in the 80s a little bit, maybe. And I think he realized that, which is probably why he wanted to retire. And, but it was one thing I had to do when I got in the store was, hey, wait a sec, this is not how we operate. I said, we're not going to scream and yell as the primary form of communication. I'm like, don't get me wrong. You're going to see me upset at some point in time. I'm not going to tell you I'm never going to get upset. But that's not going to be the primary form of communication that we have with each other because nothing gets done. And it was interesting because when I first got there, you get everybody trying to get in your ear and that sort of thing. And it was the culture of the store was almost, we're going to pit every single department against each other to hope that maybe they'll outperform each other. I'm assuming maybe there was no thought process there, but maybe the thought process was, a little competition, I guess, but it was toxic. I mean, parts would talk bad about service talk bad about sales, used cars talk bad about new cars. And it's like, whoa, wait a sec, guys, we're all on the same team. In case you didn't know that, I know we're like, 4 or 5 smaller businesses all under one, but we're all on the same team. And if we're not performing well, it doesn't do you any good just because you're making yourself look better. So you think by putting down everybody around you, that's not good for the team. It's like a basketball team. If you got LeBron James out there and he's putting down the other 4 guys on the court, sure, LeBron might look good, but the team's not going to perform well. And that's, that's one thing that we started doing is we've got variable managers meetings every day. And then, whole department head meetings every week. And they're short. I don't like having long drawn out meetings, but we talk about every aspect of things. And it's nice to be able to show the sales managers what effective labor rate means and hours per RO and, how your parts markup affects the, the health of the dealership and, different things like that, that they never knew, but that you can give them a better knowledge of the operating of the entire dealership. The cliche is if you're surrounding yourself with people who are better than you at your job, it's going to make your job easier. And it's a cliche for a reason. It's true. If everybody in the store can perform at a higher level, it makes my job easier. And that's ultimately what I want. I've got 5 stores now. The last thing I need to do is make my job harder. I need to make sure that everybody's performing at a high level, everybody's confident, and and then everybody can go to each other for help. If service is having some issues with heat right now, they'll go grab my GSM or one of the sales managers. Hey, can you help me out with this customer? And they don't even think twice about it. They just help out. And it's just an amazing feeling.
Yeah, again, because you don't want to have to hear the whole "not my job."
Yeah. That's like kiss of death with me.
It really is, man. It was for me, it was no matter what. Before I sold cars, I worked for the Men's Warehouse. I had the most outstanding training program I'd ever experienced in my life. Made everything extremely specific, how you treat guests, what you do with guests. And one of the things was, no matter what of anything, it's always your job.
Yeah.
It doesn't, if you work for us, it's your job. If today you're the manager because the manager is sick, then that's today. And so, yeah, I really agree with that. You use the word toxic culture. I think that again, if we looked at our history, I think a lot of the business 10 years ago was toxic. I think the idea of what you're saying of the pitting isn't uncommon. Maybe not to the extreme of talking, bad about the new car, used car department, but service and sales rarely have ever been told to meld. And I love this, the meeting you're making with sales managers to know about service. Maybe all of a sudden you get a guy turned on who's like, wait a second, I kind of like this data. Maybe I want to be a service manager. You go, well, we have opportunity, so that is a really cool thing, Josh. What made you want to involve all parties in areas that may have not been their area of expertise?
I like learning, number one, and I'm sure that most of my team likes to learn as well. And that's probably a lot. And the other part is you get a lot of managers sometimes that they think they know what happens in the other department, and they just don't have a clue, right? So it's nice to involve them. We had an issue with service. We had some manager turnover by design, and then we had some service advisor, not great turnover. We had one guy that really was kind of a ball hog. Anytime we hired a new person over, he'd make sure that he milked everything out of him and blew him out. So at one point we had 2 service advisors when we need 5, and we just couldn't get any traction. And so I ended up, one of them I called Mr. Personality, ended up letting him go. And then the other guy, which was the ball hog high performer, but he grabbed every RO, never gave anybody an opportunity. And then his customer service wasn't great because he literally had 90% of the ROs, but he was making a good paycheck. So he was happy. So we parted ways with him to the point where literally we had no service advisors and it was just my service manager. And we made a conscious decision that, hey, this is going to be painful for a little bit, but in order to get the culture that we want, we're going to have to start over. And I had one of my sales guys, he was needing some help on a Saturday, wasn't getting help from the service department. And he comes to me and he goes, hey, how about I just come in here and help you out? I said, yeah, normal circumstances. He was a good sales guy. So I said, normal circumstances, I'd talk you out of it. But right now we kind of need it. So come on down. And so he's been doing it for 3 months now and has just been an absolute superstar. He's my number one service advisor right now. And now we've got 4 service advisors. We're back on track. We hired absolutely greener than green service advisors. And then I hired an experienced drive manager to help them out. But this sales guy, because he had some level of knowledge of service, elementary surface level knowledge, but he's like, hey, yeah. And not only that, but his culture with me was, I want to help you out. I want to help the store out. And he was a guy actually who followed me on Closing Big. He was in Iowa. And when I bought the store, he moved out from Iowa to come sell cars for me. And so now he's a service advisor. His wife actually works in our service department as well. And I have no doubt in my mind, he's going to be a future service manager for me. But it all started with, we're just here to help each other out. We're not here to sit back and bitch and moan and complain that service is effed up. Hey, let me jump in and help you out.
Yeah, it comes back to treat everyone like family, dude.
Right.
That's what it comes back to. Very simply put, here's a guy who was following you on your messaging when you were on your own. And then he comes to hire you. What a story. What a story of success and culture driven. I want everyone, if you're watching this show, if your owner watches this show or your manager, you need to rewind, go back to what Josh just said, that if you want to truly, truly change culture, shit ain't going to be easy. It's going to hurt. You're going to have to make serious decisions. But when you make them, stand by them and make sure that everyone comes to support it. And that's what you have here, Josh. That has got to make you feel, this individual story must just bring a smile to your face.
Oh, it's amazing. So I recruited my service manager that was at my old store. He'd been there 34 years and brought him over. And, we sat down and we're like, hey, this is jacked up. We've got 2 service managers or 2 service advisors. One of them, is a high performer, but he's not following the process. He's not using X time like he should be. He's not doing anything that we need him to do, but he's making money. So he's happy. And you can tell he's an individual. He is all about himself. And then the other guy, Mr. Personality. I mean, here's an example. He works Saturdays for us. We had 2 customers walk up on a Saturday and they need the oil change or whatever their request was. He looks at his watch and he goes, I'm going to lunch. I'll be back in an hour. And they're just standing on the drive. Right. So me and the service manager go, man, here's what we need to do. We need to cut these guys loose, but we got nobody on the bench and it's harder than heck to hire anybody right now.
Yeah.
And so we sat down and go, hey, I told my son, I'll buy you a bottle of bourbon to help you sleep at night. And it's going to be rough, but when we do build the team, it's going to be better. And those 60 days were just miserable. We shut our online scheduler down. We would have people show up going, hey, I was trying to book an appointment, but it says you're booked out like 12 weeks. So I'm just here to get some work done. And we'd have to deal with that. It was really, really tough. And he was writing every single ticket. And, but now we're at a point, we've got 4 advisors and a drive manager. And, we're not quite where we want to be yet, but we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're building an incredible team. We're, starting at the ground level of training, no bad habits, no nothing. So we're really excited we did it, but we went into it with eyes wide open, knowing that, hey, the only way to change this deal, hit reset, start over, and it's going to suck for a couple months.
Yeah, make a difficult decision and stand by it, and that's something that, you could have in 15 days, Josh, you could have been like, you know what, call the high performer, get him back. We got to have someone on the drive. Like I've seen those moves made. I've seen this idea that I'm going to change things. And the second I get uncomfortable, I'm not going to do that.
Yep.
And in my world, I deal with that all the time. As a data educator, I try to help, owners understand all the information coming in from the digital marketers. And look, if you're with us for 6 months, you're with us for 3 years. But typically in 90 days, people look at me and go, this data is not that important. Okay, no problem, man. Like I get it. Here you are. It's not important to you. So let's move on. But if it is important to you, you're going to want to stick with it. So you're not going to want to just try and spend money for 30 days and expect it to work, just like you wouldn't hire or fire an employee and expect them to be what you needed or the situation to be that. after a short time. So dude, very, very awesome. Last episode, something got brought up about the hero to zero mentality and how toxic of a mentality that can be. And it really got me thinking, Josh, what is your take on the hero to zero 30-day cycle we find ourselves living in here in the car business?
It's tough. I mean, it's probably the single biggest reason why the turnover is so high in the sales industry. I mean, there's probably 4 single biggest reasons, but that's definitely one of them. It's just hard for the psyche, your mental aspect to go, hey, I'm performing, I'm rolling along good, and now all of a sudden it's reset, right? Very few people can do that and do it well. I struggled with it. I think almost everybody has struggled with it at some point. So it's difficult. It's it's definitely the way that we're measured in the car business is month to month. It's not my wife is in pharmaceutical sales. They're measured quarterly, and you don't have that gigantic spike and then the reset, and it's definitely different. It's tough. And then the only way through that is at the beginning of the month, you celebrate successes. Somebody had a success. You don't just go right to zero. And then if somebody struggled, it's an opportunity. That's what we got now. The month's over. Now you've got the opportunity to have a new and better month. And then you got to get people going right off the beginning. I think most everybody I've ever talked to, when you talk to them about their store, they're a second half store, right? It's a little different now with, the inventory, but everybody's, we're a second half store. It's like, well, you're only a second half store because you say you're a second half store. You bust, what happens is the month ends, the first week, you take a big deep breath and, you relax a little bit. And then all of a sudden you realize, well, you know what, maybe I should call a couple people. Next thing you know, it's the 7th or the 8th. And you go, shit, I got to stuff that pipeline again. And then it's the 15th and you're like, okay, I'm way behind the 8 ball, and you bust your ass and you close the month out strong. And then you just do that cycle all over again. That's why you're a second half store, right? But if you were constantly stuffing the pipeline and you treated literally not just, lip service, we're going to treat the first of the month like it's the last day of the month, but actually did that, you wouldn't be a second half store and you could get a good fast start. And I think that would alleviate some of that anxiety for a lot of the sales staff when they go from hero to zero. But if you can get them off to a fast start that first week of the month, now all of a sudden there's no anxiety again. They're just rolling along.
Yeah, it's like it's how we used to play the trunk game when I was with Nissan. You know what I mean? You would hold back money until the 15th. You'd be like, "Ooh, we're not going to trend to that number." It's like, why do we do this? Yeah. If you guys are going to spend $300 of the money anyways, spend it on the first on every car to make these deals. Because now, how many deals did I lose between now and then? And now I got to try and make it up. It's so cyclical, and the cycle. You use the word perfectly, dude. The cycle drives me nuts. But Josh, what if anything can we do about it, man?
Yeah, like I said, I think the biggest part is just communicating with the guys. You had a good month, you celebrate it, and then you get them off to another fast start. And you don't let them, it's not a finish line. I think so often we treat the end of the month like a finish line, and then we have a start line again. There is no finish line. We're just, hey, the manufacturer may have pushed the button right there and they're starting back, but hey, we're still going just as hard as we went. So we allow them to celebrate. And then if they had a bad month, we remind them that it's an opportunity now to change that and have a good month, because the month's over, we are going to hit reset. And now we've got that opportunity. So as managers, if we can help communicate that, let them know that, hey, we're not going to take a big deep breath and, take the first 7, 8, 10 days of the month off. And I know nobody does it purposely, usually.
Right. But it's mentality.
Yeah, it's subconscious, and we've got to consciously go, okay, here's what we're going to do. It's the first now. Let's get some cars out right now and get that momentum going, and treat it like it's the last week of the month.
Yeah, we have. I've had a couple of clients over the years, and we tried it back in the day when I was running stores, which was to give guys, a quarterly bone or yearly bone on units to try and keep that motivation, sort of on a longer picture as opposed to just the 30 days. I think it helped a little bit, get people thinking differently. But at the end of the day, like you said, you got to celebrate. You got to try to move forward. Josh, when you look at culture today in the car business, you mentioned some of the reasons for turnover, but why do you think that culture is so difficult to change in our business?
Oh man, you're outnumbered, number one. And a lot of people don't want to put in the work. It's the reason why most of America is obese. It's the reason why people don't quit cigarette smoking. And I use this example all the time. It's like, people know, I think everybody can agree, you smoke cigarettes, you're going to die of lung cancer. Then why do 30 million Americans still smoke cigarettes? That's the population of Canada. And there's 30 million Americans smoke cigarettes when you know it's going to kill you. And the reason why is because it's not going to kill you today. And that's the same thing with culture. You've got a high performer, or, you don't want to rock the boat. So you don't want to make any changes because this poor culture is not going to kill you today. It's going to take a couple of years. It's going to eat away at you like cancer. And that's why most people don't change, because it's a ton of work, and you may have to take some chances on some employees. You may have to run shorthanded. You may have to roll up your sleeves and get to work yourself. But I think that's why most people don't do it. They may recognize that something needs to change, but they don't want to put in the work to make it change.
Well, okay. So then that brings me to what I hope is for you, kind of that catalyst for change. I don't know if I've got the name right, Josh. Is it Chet?
No, Chuck.
Chuck? It's Chuck. See, for some reason I thought Chet just made sense, but it's
Chuck.
It's
funny. We were going back and forth. It was either going to be Chet or Chuck, and I don't know why we ended up on Chuck, but we ended up on Chuck.
All right. So with Chuck, what was the reasoning? What was the renaissance behind Chuck? I know it wasn't something Josh has always dreamed to do with his dealership. So yeah. What was the genesis of Chuck?
Yeah. So when I first got the store, my first hire was a full-time videographer, and my second hire was a full-time social media person. Even prior to that, I was pretty big on social, but it was super important to me to be big on social media. Most car dealers don't do a good job of it. They've got Susie's the receptionist. Oh, she's on Facebook all the time. She'll probably be good at it, So, and they do one stupid post a day. But when I interviewed my videographer and my social media person, I said, here's my number one broad goal is I want customers to be able to walk into the store, feel like they know me, even though they've never met me. And I want to make it fun, and I want to make it entertaining, and I want to separate us from everybody else. And so we do a ton of giveaways. We give away a car every single month. We do, a bunch of stuff with charity, and we're super involved from that aspect. And then Chuck Cheatham, he came about, and we said, let's like make fun of car guys right here. And so I went on Etsy and tried to find the most obnoxious suit I can, found one. And then we just started making videos where we make fun of car dealerships that do business the wrong way. And it's relatable because some of it's cliche. Some of people are like, oh my God, that's the dealership right down the road from me, And then what I tell my guys is, hey, don't make me a liar. Okay. Because I'm going out here saying we're different. Don't make me a liar. We better be different. And it's been fun. Yeah. It's been fun. The salespeople have fun with it when they see me come out of my office and I've got the Chuck suit on. They're like, "Oh, what's happening now?" And it's definitely, we've had a lot of fun with that character.
You touched on social. Is that a big part of your culture that you get with your team? Is it a big press for you to have them be involved, have them be involved in the store, have them be talking about their customers online? How do you bring culture into social? I think it's an important part that a lot of dealers are still not good at, as mentioned. How do you do that for your store?
Yeah. So I try and lead by example, and I know full well that not everybody is on social. Not everybody wants to be social. Not everybody wants to have a picture or video of themselves, so I try and adapt to whatever they want to do. And I tell them, if you want a logo, I'll pay for a logo. If you want, we've got a couple guys have those, I don't know what they're called, but like the banners that you pull up and they can get their picture with the customer in front of their banners. Yeah. I've done that for a couple guys. I've paid for ads for a couple guys. I tell them, whatever you want to try, I'll try. I mean, here's the thing. Like most salespeople, if they went to their GM and said, hey, can you do $500 in Facebook ads? They'd go, oh my God, that's so much money. Meanwhile, they're spending, $10,000, $15,000 on a stupid direct mail drop. That's not going to work, So I don't care. I'm willing to try if they're willing to try and see if it works. But no, it's a big part of me. So we do a lot of community stuff. We're deeply involved in the community. We do a lot of charities. I've got some charities that are near and dear to my heart. Dogs, number one; kids, number two; horses, number three; and then less fortunate is number four. And those are kind of my four main points that we try. And again, when we first got here, we found a horse charity, we found a dog rescue, we found a transitional living facility for people who are about to be homeless, and then obviously there's always an abundance of schools that we're involved in. So those are things that are super, super important to me. And then I make sure sure that, this is a community that we live in. One of the things that we talked about was, Carvana and Vroom, these monster companies. You're not going to go to a Little League game and see Carvana on the back of somebody's jersey, but you are going to see, Foundation on the back of somebody's jersey. And that's how we're involved in the community. And so I think if we can get that message out to all the people out there, let them know, hey, we are here. We're part of the community. We help people out. We're involved. That hopefully they give us an opportunity to sell them a car. And as a salesperson, that's all you want. I just want an opportunity, and the more opportunities I get, the more cars I'm going to sell. But that's all we're looking for, is just give me that opportunity.
So once again, for our owners, general managers, sales managers who might be watching, this would be another point where you'll want to rewind, because Josh just told you that his first 2 hires, okay, that's what he said. First 2 hires were non-selling employees.
Yeah.
So I want you to take a breath. I know you're probably all frantic right now that he did that, but the reality is that this is how you grow. This is how you get better, by eliminating the idea that everyone who stands next to you or to your right or left must sell a car, must write an RO. That isn't how it works long term when you worry about a community and an ecosystem like this. So Josh, thank you again for bringing that to the forefront. As we kind of close this up, you've been more than gracious with your time. I really appreciate it. What advice do you have for people who want to change their culture? Josh, what do you say to them to be prepared for, to expect? What's the advice you give them if it's time for them to change their culture? And if I could, before it's time to change, do you have any advice on how to identify where negative culture exists and then how to improve, I guess, is really my question.
Yeah, the nice thing with this day and age is you can look at your online reviews, where there's smoke, there's fire, talk to some of your entry level employees, not necessarily your department heads, and see what's going on interdepartment to interdepartment, and see where there's an opportunity to fix it. And sometimes, it's just going to be bitching, it's what it is going to be. So you've got to sift through a little bit of that noise. But the biggest thing I would suggest is take your time. If you're about to make a big change, you don't want to make rash decisions, knee-jerk stuff. Take your time, write out a plan, and begin with the end in mind. So think about, what do I want this to look like at the end? And then you can back into that. And that you just have to know that, once you make your decision, you start making some changes. Some of these changes you cannot undo. You start letting people go, it's hard to undo that. They've got another job down the road, that sort of thing. So if you change your mind, that's going to be a problem. But if you take your time and you make a plan, and you've got your vision as to what you think it looks like, then it'll make life a lot easier. I would also include your key managers, because they're going to be, you can't do everything yourself. So they're going to be super important as to what the vision looks like. You get their buy-in, then it's also their vision as well.
And it starts with you. Those were your words. It starts with you. And I can't stress enough to people that if you're listening to Josh today and you go and you look at his story, you see what he's done. He can't just walk in a room and say, change the culture, and then turn around and walk out of the room. Okay. He's got to walk out of the room in a crazy Etsy suit to prove to people that he is as invested in their culture as that he wants them to be. So Josh, man, thank you so much for your time. As I said, I want to respect that. I know you're busy doing what you do. Again, if people want to follow you, Josh, learn more about you, where can they go and do that, man?
Facebook is probably the best spot. We're just dipping our toe into TikTok as well. Instagram, we haven't done a great job with that, but Facebook's the best place. Josh Letsis, you can follow me personally. You can follow the dealerships. Foundation Colorado is our main page that we do most of our stuff on.
Excellent. And Josh is also on LinkedIn as well. I've seen him there. He posts some stuff there. He's always looking for help there. If anyone's willing to help out, it's always a great community for that. So Josh, thank you again. Everybody, thank you so much. Next week on the show, the fun continues. You're not going to want to miss that guest. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful week.